Hi guys, today I'm going to show you how to use the Chrome DevTools for JavaScript development. I'll mainly talk about Console and Debugger so you can run and debug JavaScript as you go. So for this tutorial, I'm going to be using some materials that you can download by clicking on the link in the video description. The content of the directory for the resource materials should be something like what I have here. And I'm going to be using the tutorial HTML file. So I'm just going to drag and drop on Chrome browser. And then I'm going to click on right click on the web page and select inspect, which will show me the Chrome developer tools. You can also use the Windows shortcut Ctrl+Shift+I. And now the console tab is selected, which means that I can start typing some JavaScript. I'm just going to show you what you can do with JavaScript and that you can manipulate DOM nodes of the current web page that you are on. So that, for example, I can change the color of the body for the current page. So I'll just make a background color. I'll just make it yellow. So I have yellow, and as you can see, change took place instantly. And if you're gonna refresh the page, you'll notice that the changes disappear and the console gets cleared, because none of the changes that we make in the console take actually override the file that you're working on. So you're kind of safe. If you want to save the changes, you'll need to copy paste, or you can create code snippets, which I'm gonna show you a bit later on. You can simply run any kind of JavaScript in the console. So I have some, I'm going to declare some variables, b equal 3. And I'm just going to do some basic maths, for example, b. And if you hit enter, you'll see the result in the console, which is 15. You can also write functions, for example, function add get sum, for example, I'll call it, and we'll take 2 parameters and we'll return the sum of these parameters, a plus b. And once I hit enter and I call the function, I'll just call get sum, and I'll put 11 and 12. So you'll see the output is 23 as expected. And you can do different kind of DOM manipulation as well. You can add, for example, an event listener. So you can do I'm gonna get the ID of the convert button, which is submit, and I'll just add an event listener. Listener. I'm just gonna click on the suggestion and replace the function with getSum. Actually, this is not gonna work because I need to pass an object. So I could create a function in here in place. I'll just create a function. I'll call it sum, and we'll take no parameters, and it will return you the sum of a plus b. And once I'm done, I'm gonna close the brackets. And now, for example, I'll change the value of a, and it will become 3. So a will be equal to 3, and I'm gonna click on the convert button. And technically, it doesn't return anything because I haven't printed any output. So what I could do instead, I'm just gonna copy paste again what I've done and do a simple console log. So you can see this in the console. So I'm gonna hit enter again and click on convert, and as you can see, just got the result, which is a plus b, 3 plus 3, it's equal 6. And you can clear the content of the console if you type clear clear actually as a function, and the console gets cleared. Now we're gonna move on to the sources tab, and from here I have the tutorial.js file open for some reason. If you can't see the debugger tool, you might need to expand the console, the how is it called, the DevTools. So as you can see, if I dragging it out, the debugger tools disappear. If I expand it, then it shows up. And I'm just gonna click on Page tab, and from here I can see the content of tutorial.js file. And I could simply, for example, check for event listener. So I'm just gonna select the mouse event listener, so that for any kind of mouse event that gets triggered in the web page, there will be a breakpoint for it, such that if I go and hover over the element from here, normally it triggers this debugger. So it's the mouse over event, and as you can see, it got inside the function that I created for the mouse over event. What this function does, basically, it just changes the color of the text into green. So once I click resume, then the color is green. I'm not sure if you can't tell. If you cannot, then it's fine. And then again, it gets triggered. So I'm gonna remove this mouse over event because we've seen what you can do. And just remove the mouse out as well, because I have a mouse out event. And I'm gonna show you what's happening when I click on the convert button. I'm just gonna introduce some input in the amount to exchange. Then I'll click on convert, and as you can see, the function that gets called when I click on the convert button, it's convert currency, and it's stopped on the first line of this function. So from here on, I can go step by step inside the function. So if I'm going to the panel that you can see for the debugger panel, and you click on step over, it's gonna move to the next line of code, and you can track the variables that you declared inside the scope local bit, and you have also a global scope, which comprises of the entire DOM properties for the web page. And then you also have as part of the script, which is coming from the console. As you can see, I have the variables a and b, which are equal both to 3. And in the local, you can see that I have some variables declared, but some of them haven't been initialized yet. This is the actual event that triggered the function call. And if we look in global, we can see other kind of variables, and I should be able to see here the rates variables as well. I'm just not sure where it is. Probably I could do like a search. If I do Control F, gonna search. Now it's only searching in the JavaScript file. Maybe if I look carefully, I will spot it somewhere. Basically, rates is global variable that I declare, and you can see it clearly in the JavaScript file. So I cannot see it inside the global variables. Oh, I found it. There we go. As I said, they're declared here. So I'm just gonna minimize this, and I'm gonna come back to the scope. And if looking whilst I'm going through the lines, you'll see that some of the variables get initialized. And also, if the amount that I entered inside the input box was not the valid number, then if I click on resume, you'll see the error message. Okay, I'm gonna click on this. As you can see, the other events that I declared in the console are still there, and the debugger tool basically goes through all these events. Probably I'm just gonna refresh the page, so now it should have forgotten about anything that I've done previously in the console. As you can see, it's clear. And now that you've seen how to use the event listener breakpoints, I'm gonna show you how to set some breakpoints. For example, if you are not unsure about the output or input for some of the variables, you can set it directly inside the code where you think there might be a problem. So for example, I'm gonna set a breakpoint inside the isAmountValid function for line 36. And as you can see, this breakpoint is showing in the breakpoints bar here. The XHR or fetch breakpoints are normally for the asynchronous calls. And there are other kind of breakpoints that you can see within DOM or global listeners. We're not gonna be looking into that today. You can also use the watch tab. In here, you can customize expressions, or you can simply watch variables if that makes it easier for you. So for example, I can add a variable for amount, and I will want to see the result of the amount multiplied by 3. For now, it's not a number. That's the obvious output. But as I'm going through, you might notice that this will change. So if I'm gonna trigger this event, I'm just gonna put amount to exchange to 4, and I'll click convert. As you can see, the debugger stopped at the line that I selected, and I'm just gonna add a second breakpoint. So once it's out of this function, assuming that the input that I provided is a valid input, it's gonna stop here as well. So if I click on the resume script execution button, as you can see, the debugger stopped at this line. And if you're looking now in the watch tab, you'll see that amount multiplied by 3 is showing 12, which is the correct result for the multiplication of 4 by 3. Now that you've seen this as well, I hope this makes it clear for you. You don't necessarily need to set a breakpoint for every function that you run. I'm gonna show you what you can do next. I'm gonna remove the breakpoints, and I'm just gonna add one at line 15. So if I'm gonna click convert again, once it stops at line 15, and there is the function called isAmountValid, I can click on step into next function call button, and this will direct me to the next function, which is isAmountCall, and it's gonna get inside this function. And if I've seen the kind of check that I needed to see, I can click on step out current function, and it will resume back to the function that called the second function initially. So I'm just gonna go ahead on line 19, which means that the input was valid, and I can carry on with the calculus. So I'm just gonna do another step. Step over basically means you can skip the function call, and step, it just does it step by step. So you don't really need to use step over or step into if you just want to follow the code that you've written line by line, including the function calls. So I'm just gonna show you how you do that. So if I'm back here, and I'm gonna trigger again once more, I click on step, goes inside the function. As you can see, inside the isAmountValid function, I'm gonna click resume again, and I'll show you what happens when I click step over for the if statement that makes the call to isAmountValid function. So step over, as you can see, it didn't send me inside the function isAmountValid, but it skipped going inside the code for that bit, and it resumed to the current code that needed to be executed. And I guess this is it. You can also do pause and exception. Once you set this bit from here, it means that if there's any exception that you haven't caught in your code, you will do it by default. So the browser will stop there, and you will see what the exception was. Also, earlier I was talking about creating snippets. So what you can do, if you click on the chevron icon and then click on snippets, here you can create new snippets that will interact with your current code, so that once you're happy with the changes that you make, you can save these snippets, and they will stay here. Basically, it's not the same as the console. If you refresh the page and you wrote some snippets, for example, I'll just say document.body.color .style .color equal yellow. If you remember, I just pressed Ctrl S shortcut to save this snippet. So if you remember what I showed you previously, if you do this in the console, when you reload the page, the console gets clear. Whilst if you do this here and you click Ctrl Enter, normally the body gets overwritten, but I did a misspelling. So I'm just gonna spell it correctly this time. So I'm gonna click Ctrl S shortcut, and then if I run this, you can see the content became yellow. Earlier I was showing you this for the background color. Probably will be more present if we do see this change. I'm just gonna go ahead and edit the snippet. I'm gonna exit this. I'm gonna refresh the page. As you can see, everything came back to normal, and the snippet still exists, which means that I can run it again. I can click the run snippet or Control Enter. Control Enter is just faster for me. And as you can see, the background color of the body just changed. And you can also save this snippet wherever, save as, and you can save it as a new JS file, which is really cool. Also, you can use the file system tab, and here you can add the folder that you're currently working on, such as I'm gonna go to downloads and add this folder. So once I add this, I need to allow Chrome to access the file system, and once the file is in here, I can make changes to the file. For example, I will change this rate something exaggerate so that you can see these changes. And once I click, I use the shortcut Ctrl S, these changes get updated. So if I refresh the page and I try to say, for example, 5, as you can see, the new amount that I'm getting is 50 because the file just updated. This is really cool if you want to work on your code as you go and edit the current file that you are on. What I recommend is creating a new snippet, because it won't have an impact over the current code, but it will add extra stuff which you can test. And if you're happy with your code that you created, then you can go ahead and paste it inside the source file that you're using for the page. I hope it was a comprehensive tutorial, and thanks for watching, and see you next time.